Welcome to By His Grace podcast. I am Tansha Ward, and I would like to welcome you to the podcast where I get to speak with amazing guests who are telling their stories of living by God's grace. And I have with me Apostle Nathaniel Rainey, who's going to be joining in, and he's going to be telling his story of transitioning from a boy to a man in the kingdom. So this is going to be a message for the brothers because we want men to see what they need to do in order to live in this world, but not of this world. It means that you must have a transformed mind. You must be willing to submit to God and surrender yourself to God. So we're going to give him an opportunity to join in. Hello, Apostle Rainey. How are you?
I am great, excited, and great. Let me fix my camera. All right. Think I'm good now.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you sharing with me.
Yes, ma'am. I'm grateful to be here and I'm excited and humbled that you asked me to come on today.
Well, thank you so much. I will introduce you and then we will get started. I have with me Apostle Nathaniel Rainey III. He's a husband, father, founder, and pastor of Gyro Tabernacle Worship Center, author, and a gospel songwriter and play music writer. So he has done a lot of great things in his life, and we thank God for him. And we are here just so that we can share with men in the kingdom what
Yes.
it's like to live a kingdom life. Because we don't always get it right, but it comes a point in our lives where we say, I have to choose God. So when I was thinking of bringing you on, I actually researched the name Nathaniel.
hmm
And Nathaniel is a name that has a Hebrew origin and it means gift from God. And I want to know, do you consider yourself a gift from God?
You know, um, in all honesty, from a humble perspective, um, I don't, I don't view it that way. But my grandmother, God bless her, she said to me, she said, "Baby, you the only grandchild that came out with freckles and light skin." She said, "I believe that you are a gift from God to me."
Wow.
She said, "So listen," she said, "I need you to not view yourself as awkward or odd." She said, "Because the freckles are the sign of the gift that God have given to me as far as a grandchild." And so she told me that day, man, that I was going to do a lot of amazing things, you know. But she only lived to hear me announce my call. She didn't get a chance to see anything else.
Wow. And that's so amazing to hear that because biblically names had meanings. You know,
Yes,
now people give their children all sorts of names that they take the mother and the father names and put them together and come up with some unique name. But in the Bible days, names had meanings. So your name, gift from God, is actually what you're living now. And your grandmother spoke it to you.
yes, Lord. Yeah.
Yes. So
And so,
now I can say, I know someone whose name has a meaning, and I can say I actually am witnessing it in your life.
yes, ma'am. It has been an amazing it has been an amazing venture, and I often think about Nathan in the Bible, who was the prophet to David, to try to tell him, you know, things that were going on in his life. I think about that all the time. But right now, truly, I believe that God has called me for such a time as this, to be a gift to the many in whom I pastor and those that I've run across in life.
But thank God for that, that you come into the knowledge of that sooner
Yes,
than
ma'am.
later.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that is awesome to hear you say that. So what is an unspoken truth that you would say about you? Because people see you as a pastor, they see you on social media. What is something that you have come into knowledge about yourself that you had to learn about you?
Here's and I'm gonna be honest. The one thing I learned about me is that I can't do what everybody else do.
Right.
God, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but God just have always held me to a higher accountability. And the reason why I say this because and a lot of people probably have this same testimony, but I noticed that when I do what other people do, I'm not able to sleep well. I'm not able to go on, and continue without being so convicted that I can't sleep at night. When I go before the Lord in my devotional period, um, I don't hear God tell me anything about nobody else.
Hmm.
The conversation is about me. And I've always said, Lord, what is it about me, that um, I can't get away with nothing, So it's, you know, in all honesty, so that's what it pretty much brought down to, the 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 one thing about me is that I'm gonna say this that's not told. I'm a jack of all trades, but the master of none.
Hmm.
I could do a whole lot of things. God has gifted me with a whole lot of gifts. Um, and I'm just kind of like a pastor that's just like all over the place, from musicianship to preaching to running media, any and everything. I do it. I do it without hesitation.
Hmm. Well, you have to be able to know how to do it all, even if you don't have to do it all.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
when you're working the vision that God has given you. Can you work it by yourself if no one else shows up?
Right, right, exactly. That's what it boiled down to.
Yes.
Yes,
And, he doesn't want us to do everything, but we have to want it. We have to be so
yes,
passionate about it that if we need to, we can.
exactly. And you're right.
And that's what a lot of people fall short in that area because they feel like that's not for me. I can't do this. And then they don't learn the systems. And then when that person who's doing it does not show up, there's a void.
Exactly. It's over with. And so yeah, that's one of the untold truths about me. The other untold truth about me is that I just have this, in all honesty, I have a love for, I guess I want to say I have a love and a passion for the man who may be falling short in any part of his life. And when I say the man, I mean generally male and female. Um, it's a weakness for me. I
Mhm.
try to get over it. I've been called, crazy. I've been called, overbearing, too worried about the people. But it's so hard for me. Woman of God, for me to pass. And I'll give you an example. It's hard for me to pass by the person holding the sign on the corner saying we'll work for food, and I not dig in my pocket and give them some. That's
Mhm.
my heart and my spirit for God's people. And I think every day, just like I did it when I was a child, I still imagine being able to feed the multitudes, provide for people, and that my ultimate goal and dream. And when I say dream, I mean really like a child, imagine these things while also trying to pray to God about it. My ultimate goal and vision and dream is to ultimately be able to go from giving out food to maybe giving out cars and houses. You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm at. That's the untold truth about me, for real. No,
A heart for the people,
all for the people.
heart for a bleeding heart too, a
Yes,
bleeding heart for the people.
yes,
Because
for real.
in order for you to do it on that level, you actually have a bleeding heart. It's like, I can't let it go. I'm pouring
Cannot.
out myself. And we need more people like that. And I'm not even just going to say in the kingdom, just in the world.
In the
Love,
world.
because that's
Yes, ma'am.
what we're called to. We're called to love.
Yes,
And the
ma'am.
greatest of all gifts and all things is love.
Yes, it covers all things,
It
man, for
covers
real.
all things. Yes. Now we know that we are all products of a system. Our
Yes.
family, our communities, our church, our jobs. What system would you say had the greatest impact on your life?
I believe that the greatest system that had the impact on the most impact on my life, and if you don't mind, I need to use two. It's going to
Go
be
ahead.
it's going to be family, and it's going to be church.
Mhm,
Family from a perspective of my mom was real strict, um, and of course, all of my life I didn't understand the strictness, right? But then when I became a man, I should have said when I made 18, from that strictness, I was able to move out on my own, have my own apartment, had them bought a car, things of that nature. Matter of fact, my first car purchase was at the age of 16. Just couldn't drive it until I was 18. But her strictness, I learned the value of that strictness once I left the house.
mhm,
Everything she taught me, I started naming some stuff. I'm like, you know what? I've never been to jail. I never did this and I never did that. And I was naming things, not to do it from a prideful perspective or from a better right perspective, but it was more of, Lord, thank you that I had a strict mother,
mhm,
because there's a lot of things that I did not have to experience because of that. And then my mom married again, and the man that came into my mom's life, which is my stepfather, Howard, he was strict as well. And he was pretty much like he was, well, my mom was more of the beater than him, but he was like the enforcer. And he made us cut the grass, wash the cars, pick up leaves outside. He used to just make up stuff for us to do. And again, I didn't understand none of that, but because of that, I've been a working man all my life. I don't believe in just laying down.
mhm.
I believe that if you don't work, you don't eat, because he instilled that in us. And he was not a real go to church every Sunday man, but he just had a lot of values in that particular area of life, and so it made me better as a husband. It made me better as a man. Period. Once I left the house, I didn't have to really go back. My mom started missing me, and she asked me to come back. You know, but yeah, it taught me how to be a man. That's that. Church, because at an early age, I started in church, Pentecost Baptist Church to be exact. Um, and it was the upbringing and the kind of people we had around us at that time, people who genuinely care for the kids, that would pick the children up all in one car, you know what I'm saying? And you sitting children on top of children lap just to get to Sunbeam choir rehearsal and things of that nature. They took us on trips, church trips. They kept us, they made coming to second services fun, because we always had like mother figures and father figures, who kind of kept us going while we were in church. So of course from there, when I made about 15, um, our church was kind of descending a little bit, and the Lord was just kind of moving me around. By the time I was like 15, I was kind of going from church to church. Ran into this church called True Vine Baptist Church in New Orleans, Pastor John. And there, it was my first time ever seeing people really shout and speak in tongues.
Mhm.
And I felt something there. And um, after I felt something there, I knew that there was something greater than what I was kind of experiencing at my own church at the time. And my aunt, Marilyn Smith, Pastor Marilyn Smith, she invited me to New Home for a Gospel Cathedral. At the time, it was in the East. They kind of had just kind of started or whatever. I went there to visit. Of course, I went there with all my cousins, and we looked at like we were a game when we went. And I'll never forget Pastor Steve Allen at the time. He was the assistant pastor at the time, real young. They were young. And he was singing a song. And my baby, I tell you no lie, the Holy Spirit hit me while he was singing the song. And I never forget, I reached over and told my aunt, I said, I feel like dancing. And I said, can you let me out? And when she let me out, the Holy Ghost took over me. And I danced all around that church. And he was finished the song, and I was still dancing.
Mhm.
And that day I got instantly filled with the Holy Ghost. And from then, the rest was like really history. There, I kind of got filled with the Holy Ghost. That was a new thing for me. I was trying to figure out what it was. I was instantly filled with tongues at the moment, at the time, right? And that's when I really started seeing like the gifts come.
Right.
Um, I went from playing keyboard to playing drums, directing the choir, just doing any and everything that was needed. And all of the people at that time who were elders and ministers at the time were real strict. I won't do no names, right? So that we won't. They were strict, man. They would come up to us and check us, you know, about different things, whether we were playing with the little girls or whatever it may be. Because again, I was like just 15 at the time, and the rest was history, man. I fell in love with church, and I fell in love with God, man. I think I really didn't fall in love with God like I fell in love with church until I was like about 18,
Mhm.
19. I was really just kind of doing the church thing. I was just in love with everything that was going on in church, you know what I'm saying? Still, I found myself at a young age listening to the sermons, though, being in tune like most teenagers wouldn't be at that time. Um, and I started having various experiences um, with God during those times. And so um, I would say the church got called that received my calling at 18 and started having all kind of like real spiritual experiences with God in the midnight hours, waking up in the wee hours of the night, just a mind blowing change and shift like that. Yeah. So I would say family and the church for real.
And that means that you had a solid foundation
Yes.
because that's
Balance.
what's important. And a
Yes,
lot of
ma'am.
people don't think about what the foundation does. And we're not just talking about family because everyone has family.
Hmm.
We're talking about what the family plants. And while
Yes, ma'am.
you didn't see it with your mother, you look at it as being strict, but she was actually sowing into you,
Yes, ma'am.
planting you in good soil. She didn't want you to have to waver. She didn't want you to
Yes,
have to
ma'am.
go through all the other stuff that everyone went through. So now that you say that your mother was strict, how would your childhood friends describe you? Because they watched you in the neighborhood. They probably watched your mother take a stance. How would they describe you and what they see now?
Um, Lady um, Michelle, um, everybody who I see, I run into from childhood, say, "Man, I knew there was something different about you. I knew it be, I knew you were gonna you were gonna do something." Um, Many thought that I would pretty much go into the secular music kind of world, kind of, because we used to, we had a dance group in New Orleans. As I was coming up as a teenager, we was a dance group, and then and we were so much a dance group. I hope this ain't too far off, but we were so much a dance group that one time Pastor Blake's Jr. Because he was new at, he was a new pastor. He actually let us do a routine dance on a Sunday morning, and we danced to Kurt Franklin. To never forget it. And we actually did our street dance to a Kurt Franklin song, and I mean, it blessed the church, but that we had a dance group. So a lot of our people, a lot of my friends thought that was gonna be the route for me, and I was always in like plays and things like that in school. I was in all of the school plays. I always volunteered. It didn't matter how silly the part was, and so. Whenever they see me, they always say, "Hey, I knew that there was going to be something different about you." And most of my childhood kids that would friends that would describe me, most of them describe me as that person that was just totally different from everybody else. While those who caught me in the worst times would always say, "Man, y'all was some bad little kids," you know. But that really was my surrounding more than me myself. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense. I
Right.
was um I was scared of everything. but real sneaky, if that makes sense. You know,
Hmm.
I was scared to do everything. I'll push my cousins to do it, you know, and just I would reap the benefits, if that makes sense. Yeah,
Hmm.
but pretty much most of them would say that I was different.
So you've always been different. God called you to stand out even as a child. You just
All through
hadn't really
school,
walked into it.
always volunteered to pray in the class. Always, when I got in band, even in elementary, I got in the band when I was in elementary school. I would volunteer to do the prayer for the band, in the choir, the youth, the elementary school choir at Edison Elementary School across Canal, um, Thomas Alva Edison. I was in the choir, and whenever we would close out, I'll step up to be the, to pray
Hmm.
the kids out. Was never shy about it. You know what I'm saying? Always had like this God conscious, if that makes sense. Yeah,
Hmm. That's awesome. As a young child, you had what God needed, and He was using you, but you didn't even know what it was. You
did
just
not.
thought you were doing what you do. He was
That's all.
preparing you for a time such as this.
Yes, ma'am.
So, how long have you been a pastor of Jireh Tabernacle?
Um, I'm getting ready to make my 19th year
Oh,
as the pastor of John
congratulations.
Tabernacle Worship Center. Yes, very awesome people. I love my church. I really do. I have such a heart for my church. Is mind blowing. But yeah, 19 years.
Well, good. That's awesome. Congratulations on 19 years of being a pastor. That is admirable because some give up
Yes, ma'am.
when the road gets rough. And it's really different when you are not a legacy pastor because legacy pastors have churches handed to them. They're
Yeah,
placed in position, but you are the founder and pastor, which means that you had to actually step out on faith in this kingdom walk. What was it like being in unknown territories, but knowing what God had said, this is what you should be and what you should do? How was that for you?
it it was very very. Um, it was a scary moment, but still bold.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why: because we were fresh from the storm, Katrina, here in Dallas. Um, and it was pretty much one of the first times, listen to this good, that I heard the voice of the Lord, right? Or I felt the unction of the Lord in me. And I had felt that before, but this time for some reason I was listening,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was driving down the street called Jupiter Road. And the Lord said, start a church. Here's what I said. And I was like, Lord, I can't start no church. Number one, I don't have nothing. All I had was shorts, flip flops, and a t-shirt. And I was going through a divorce. I was separated from my first wife. And we were going through a divorce. And I was like, Lord, I can't. I'm in. There's nothing about me that
Mm-hmm.
says I'm a pastor material. And I didn't have any money. And I couldn't rest for the whole day, couldn't rest for the week. And I was driving down the street again, headed home to the apartment that they had us in, that actually FEMA had us in. And while I was driving home, I said, Lord, if this is you talking to me, because I felt uneasy, I said, then you make a way.
Right.
I, I went checked the first storefront place, and the people told me they wanted $1,500 a month. I'm like, see, it must be me talking to me. And I'm having these problems. I'm really talking to myself. I'm going back and forth. I said, it must be me talking to me. This ain't real. That's. And so I said, can't be. Um, I get this call out the blue, from a lady who was a woman's pastor in her church. Her church was in a place called Oak Cliff here in Texas, right? Here in Dallas, Oak Cliff. She said, Pastor Rainey? I said, yes. And this happened just like this, Sister Tanshel. She said, do you know a young lady by the name of Shelly? I said, yes. That's my cousin. She was in the choir, in my choir back out in New Orleans. She said, yeah, well, she told me that you might be looking to start a church here in Dallas. I had never talked to this young lady
Wow.
since the storm, right? I said, that what she told you? She said, yeah. I said, I wonder where she got that from. She said, well, I tell you what, listen, can you come to the church tonight? We have a musical and revival. I said, ma'am, all I got is a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. She said, come just as you are. I went there that night. When I got there, I seen Shelly and they embraced me. And then the lady asked me to come up and sing. And I got up and I sung. When the church was over, to make a long story short, she said, listen, she said, I don't know if you're serious. She said, but God brought you here for a reason. She said, and the Lord told me to let you use my church to start your ministry. And so here's the scary part, right? I'm like, ma'am, listen. I said, I can't afford your church. You know, it was a church building. I said, I can't afford your church. I said, and I'm thinking, I don't got no members, no nothing, right? You know, I'm like, I can't start no church. It's a joke. And then I'm still thinking about my condemnation of me going through a divorce and this and another. She said, you don't have to pay for it. The Lord told me to let you rent the building for free. She said,
Wow.
and when you get members, she said, then you could maybe just give a little something towards the light bill. But other than that, I want you to start on, start or what have you, and just take your time. By that weekend, because I'm going through all kind of emotional things, now I'm actually getting depressed. Mind blowing, right? I'm getting depressed because I feel the need to make this move, but I'm thinking my cousins know me, they're familiar with me, you know what I'm saying? These people are not gonna hear it. So I called the meeting, boldly called the meeting in an apartment living room. When I called the meeting, I told them, hey y'all, listen, the Lord told me to start a church. I was trying to see if y'all would join me and help me some kind of way. They were like, okay, so what's your plan? And I went to tell them the plan. And I even had made like a little theme song that the church, that our church actually sings today. And I told them what the name of the church was, this, that, and the other. They left. Now they took me serious, but they laughed and they joked through it. And my mind was playing tricks on me. I was overthinking. I was like, man, they ain't serious. This not gonna work. Um, and I decided to just go in and hold my little first service. Told all my church members about it. I mean, I told not my church, I told my family about it. And my grandfather was living at the time, and he was just at its very early stages of Alzheimer's. And I told him about it, and he went in his pocket and he pulled out $800. He said, "Listen, I believe that God told you that." He said, "And I wanna be the first person to sow a seed into your ministry." Now I had not started, and he gave me $800. With the $800, I went on and rented a speaker system for that church because the church didn't have any. Right? I rented one, and when I was on my way to the church, very raggedy church had a big old hole in the ceiling. Spiders and roaches were everywhere. Um, Went there to hold church on the first Sunday. The first Sunday I went to have church, my family showed up, and while I was driving there, the Lord said, "If you do this church, if you do this ministry," He said, "you're never going to be judgmental of another person like I have not been judgmental of you." He said, "Because I've forgiven you, you're gonna always be forgiven to other people." When he said that, when he said that to me, it was then that this song that I had wrote had came back to my mind clearly. It was called "It's Gonna Be Different from Here,"
Mm-hmm.
and the song came back to my mind, and I went to church, and I never forget. The first sermon I preached was "Failure is Not Final,"
Wow.
and on that Sunday, my overseer, who's the overseer of my church right now, he joined the church that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
My little brother, his friend, I had like 5 people join the church, right? By the next Sunday, miraculously, the rumors had got around that Pastor Rainey had started a church, right? And that next Sunday, some of my choir members that was choir members in New Orleans for this church I played for across the canal, Benton, on Benton Street, called Good Faith Baptist Church. They showed up at the church. And so I made them sing that day. And they became my choir ever since. And they all of them are still with me right now today. So all of
Wow.
them been with me for 19 years. We all super grown now. And so the rest is history. That was once the church kind of started going, and um, I actually, like I said, I couldn't give them money because, of course, you know how people go. I ain't about to give. They knew me, so like I ain't about to give them my money. So it wasn't tied into me or anything like that. But God was doing supernatural things. I had an aunt who started. My great aunt started coming, and she was sewing $50 a week. Believe it or not, that was enough for me to give the lady something and to pay for my rental every week for my equipment. My rental was $36 a week for the equipment, believe it or not. And I would give the rest to the lady. Before you know it, sis, my church grew within a year. It grew to like about maybe 30 strong, right?
Right.
And these people stood with me and they came on the journey with me. We moved about 8 times before God blessed us with our own building. And even that, it seemed like every time I doubted that God told me to preach, right? It told me to pastor, something else happened. And I'll hurry up and get through it. But the first thing is, once I started the church and I started seeing people every Sunday. Of course, I had a lot of Sundays where nobody would come and it'd be just me, my wife, and maybe two people. I would still go like I was preaching to 1,000, right? And I never forget, things started happening miraculously. My parents came to visit. They wasn't going there. And that Sunday they sold $10,000. It was after I had prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, I'm tired of renting this stuff. I want to own it, right? And for me to own it, honestly, was just $1,200. They sold $10,000. That set my ministry off. It made me be able to go do all of my legal stuff for my ministry and things of that nature. Um, so every time I wanted to quit, something miraculous happened to show me that God was with me, right? And so this $10,000 thing, what I did out the $10,000, I told you I'm about people. So that Christmas of that year, I gave all of my members $50 gift cards, right, for Christmas, and they were so mind blown for that. It made them start giving then the next year consistently. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes you got to show yourself friendly first, right?
Right.
And they saw that I was serious about the love for my people, and so they were with me and they were on board with me. And so we moved about 7 times. Whenever I ran into anybody from Dallas, they always say, "Young man, every time we look around, you moving from building to building." It was to discourage me, right? I'm sorry. Let me say the first thing I did. First thing I did is I called home and I told Prophet Blakes, I said, Prophet, I just want to tell you something. I said, I hope you don't be mad with me. I said, I started a church here in Dallas and I'm probably not coming back home. He said, You did, huh? He said, I said, yes. I said, and I'm sorry. I said, but at your word, if you tell me to come back, and I wanted him to tell me to come back, right? Because I didn't want a pastor. I said, if you tell me to come back, I'm coming right now. And then he said to me, he said, no. He said, I envision you pastoring. He said, here's what I want you to do. Come back home and let me lay hands on you. And I, with haste, I mean, I drove all the way back and bought a couple of guys who had joined my church. I brought them with me, like two or three guys. And I never forget, he laid hands on me that morning. He said, y'all better look out for this young man. He laid hands on me. And I was out like a light. went back home. And again, miraculous things started happening. Um, every year, every time we moved, I was telling my church, I would tell them, this time next year we gonna get our own building. And the people were like, how we gonna get our own building? We don't got no building fund. They was coming to me with these deals. They're like, you got to get you a poster board with the little red, with the
Meters.
red marker. Yeah, and you gotta have a meter, a thermostat, and we gotta give to it. So of course that frustrated me. I'm like, we ain't gonna never get no money like that. I seen that at my old church and when I was going to the Baptist church, they used to have that. I said, that thing took years. I said, man, I can't do this. I said, I'm renting buildings and I'm getting put out buildings, going to the next building, and it was just they were selling their buildings or whatever. They were just out of church. Make long story short, um, a man I used to work for at 14. Remember I told you my dad,
Mm-hmm.
my stepdad would make me go to work. The company he made me go to work for, that man found out I was pastoring, and he gave me a call. He said, "Nat, I heard you pastoring." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to come and preach for my picnic, the company picnic." And of course, with my religious self, I said, "Man, I'm not." I put the phone down. I said, "Man, I ain't about to go preach for nobody picnic and miss my Sunday. I only got a few members. If I miss, you know what I'm saying, they probably ain't gonna come back." The Holy Spirit said, "Go." I went. I went to that picnic and I preached. Um, and I preach your condition is not your conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 30 people, all Caucasians, got saved, including his atheist stepdaughter. He
Wow.
walks up to me with tears in his eyes. Now, mind you, this is just the 8 year of my ministry. The 8 year, we'd have moved 8 times, 8 year of my ministry. He walked up to me with tears in his eyes. He said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "What can you do for me?" He said, "What can I do for you?" And I promise you, the Holy Spirit came up on me with a boldness. And I said, "Man, what you saw happen under that tent with those people being, it was under a canopy at a picnic." I said, "What you saw happen under the canopy, that could probably happen more when I go back home if I had a church building." He said, "Are you saying you want me to invest in your church building?" He said, "You want me to build you one?" I said, "No, there's a lot of churches that are for sale. I just need somebody to invest and buy me one and let me just pay them back." I said, I said, "I done moved 8 times." He said, "Give me time to think about it." He said, "And I'm gonna send you a check for what you did out here." 3 days later, I get back home to my apartment in Irving. 3 days later, I received a $3,000 check in the mail, and I signed for it. And as soon as I signed for it, he must have got an alert. He called me on the phone. He said, "Man, hey, did you receive my blessing?" I said, "Yeah, it was the first time I ever got paid $3,000 for anything, right?" He said, "Man, I talked to my wife." He said, "And we thought about what you said." He said, "I want you to." He said, "And we have both agreed that we're gonna go ahead and invest in you, and go ahead and get that building for you." He says, "So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you $520,000." He said, "Go find your building."
Wow.
Make a long story short, um, make a long story short, sis, this man ended up buying me a building for $540,000. The building was worth 1.4 million. Of course, I psyched my church up. I act like I didn't go to church. I was actually in the booth hiding, and I sent the fume to them. This is just a good story for people that may be listening. I had a fume. I had view. The church the building we were getting, and everything. I had not told nobody about it but my wife. And I shot a film of myself in front of our church saying, "Y'all, I'm so sorry. I'm not coming back to that building ever again." And they were getting sad and everything like that. I said, "It's over. As y'all can see, the chairs are stacked up. Um, I'm not coming back to pastor at that building anymore." And I paused, and everybody started making, started getting sad. Some people was starting to, they were getting sad and things of that nature. I said, "Because we going to another building that we have purchased our own building." So and we let balloons out. I had balloons come out the back and all of that, and we celebrated. And I think this is the greatest highlight of my ministry is when we drove, like, they don't do things in Texas like they do in New Orleans, but I did it the New Orleans way. We all got in cars at the storefront building, and we did a parade drive, motorcade to the new
Yes.
building. And when they got there, they were mind blown. Let me blow your mind right quick. He buys this building for me, and the rent. Now, mind you, I had been paying rent. My rent had then went up to, like, at this time I'm paying like $3,500 a month, right? He buys this building for me, and he says, "Now you got 10 years to pay me my money back."
Mm-hmm.
Um, he says, "But you don't have to pay me the first 2 months, right?" He says, "You just, your note is gonna be this." He gave me a note. The note was like, honestly, the note was like $7,000 a month, right?
Wow.
I, I didn't get scared. I was bold about it. and all of a sudden, one of my members fell to his debt, what was supposed to be his debt. And to make a long story short, he lived and not die. He got a sue, wrote a check out to the church. I took the check and gave it to the man for the down payment, right? To cut the payment in half. It brought my note back down to $3,500, right?
Wow.
So I ended up paying for my building what I was already paying. It became a mortgage. Not many years after that, within 8 years of being in my building, the 8 year,
Mm-hmm.
I'm driving going to Houston. I hope this helps somebody. I'm driving going to Houston to go whip my son. I'm angry and I'm going to whip him. I'm driving from Dallas to Houston. This man calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Right now, man, I'm going to whip my son. I'm going to lay some hands on him." He said, "You sound like you're angry." I said, "I am, because he's been acting up in school." He said, "Well, I hope this make you feel better." Oh, Jesus, I feel the Holy Ghost already. He said, "The Lord told me to give you the building."
Wow.
He said, "You don't owe me nothing else." He said, "I'm just going to give it to you." He said, "I'm going to just swallow the rest of the rest of it." He said, "You no longer owe anything. I'm giving it to you." And
Wow.
so this is my life. This is my ministry. God has over and over shown me miraculous things like this, and that's my life of my ministry. So, yes, ma'am.
That is wow. Just listening to you gives you chills to hear
Yes,
how
ma'am.
God works it out. And the name of this podcast is By His Grace, Not Worthy, but Worth It. And you
Yes,
actually are living proof of that. At a moment when you felt like you weren't worthy,
my God.
God was showing you that you were worth it.
Yes, Lord.
Everything that He purposed for your life, you were worth it. You
God
are
is
a true
amazing.
testimony of the wonder working powers of God.
Yes, Lord.
More people need to hear that because
Yes,
people feel like they failed God and God is so angry that He can't come through for them. And you are proof that even in your mess,
yes,
you are a message to the people.
yes, Lord.
So that, oh my goodness. I'm overjoyed just listening to you tell the story.
Yes, Lord.
So would you have
Amazing.
imagined yourself being a pastor?
Would not. Now, Pastor Blake's Jr., I'll never forget, he took all of us, well, all of the Omer bearers, like three of us, we were all ministers, and he took us riding, and he was asking us a question. "Hey, if y'all had to be a pastor of a church, what would the name of your church be?" And I'll never forget that day when I actually gave him what my name was, what my name would be. That's what I actually named the church, and that's how I became Jairus Tabernacle Worship Center. Number one, because I was a worship leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
So worship had to be in there. And then I was a worship leader most of my church going life, and then my teenage to adulthood life, I was a praise and worship leader. So it had to have worship in there. And then Jairus meant provider,
Mm-hmm.
because I always felt like God provided for me, even at an early age, So um, yeah, so I wouldn't have never imagined being a pastor though. Remember I told you my thought was when I was coming to Dallas is to go play for somebody's church. Matter of fact, that's what I did when I first
Mm-hmm.
came. That's the way I got on my feet. Is I went found me a job playing as a musician at a church called Fort Ward, way in Ennis, Texas. I used to have to drive like 45 to 50 minutes every day just to get there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I started here in Texas. I was Dallas. I was playing, taking, playing for the church, you know. And so I didn't imagine being a pastor, and I didn't know that it would come together like it did. And I promise you, I knew nothing about pastoring. I didn't know how to do administration, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
But God's grace is sufficient. That's all I can say.
Yes, it
He
is.
he he honored the faithfulness.
Yes, he did. And that is truly what people need to see and hear. That it's not clicking your heels together. It's not some magical moment that people have. You truly had to walk in obedience. Because when you were
Yes,
doing it afraid, God was sending you. So that is awesome to hear. what would you say was the moment of awakening where you say, okay, Lord, I get it. I get this is you. When did you have that moment?
I'm gonna be totally honest and transparent. When I failed in ministry,
Okay.
when I failed, listen. I'm pastoring, all is going well, and my old man comes up. He decides to take resident. Hey, you know what? This is a good time while everything is going well, just as Adam and Eve did with having, whole garden, choosing an apple over a whole bunch of fruit. I chose the apple over the fruit,
Mm-hmm.
and as a result, man, um, I failed big time as a pastor in the church. Failed my marriage, and I set myself down, and I was actually gonna quit. I was quitting. I was gonna quit pastoring and everything. This was before I got the building. This before all of this happened, right? And the overseer guy who I told you joined the church, right? Who started with me. Him and his wife came. Matter of fact, that's my cousins. Uh, they came and set me down. They said, Pastor, I need to ask you a question. Who told you to sit down? Did God make you sit down? I said, no, I set myself down. I said, I'm so embarrassed I can't even go back, this, that, and the other, what have you. And they began to preach to me what I had been preaching in the church. Your condition, not your conclusion. Failure is not final. Whatever you're going through is a temporary inconvenience. They start reminding me of how you going to preach that to us, but then you don't follow your own rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never forget they took us to Razuz that day, and I never forget. We leaving, going home. I got tears in my eyes. They don't know because I didn't cry in front of them, but I'm crying in front of my wife, and I'm driving home, and I never forget. When I got home that night, the Lord said, now my wife never left my side, never threatened me or anything. She loved me through the whole thing like a real Christ angel. You hear me? Never brought it back to never asked, never questioned me about it ever again. She prayed for me. Matter of fact, made love to me the night that it all came out or what have you. And she never let me go, man. Prayed me through it. And I never forget that night though. I was driving home, and then and like I said, I was hearing God like I had never heard God before. When I got to Dallas, I was just hearing God in a whole different kind of meaning and way. And the Lord said to me, "Who told you to quit? And if you felt I told you to quit, why didn't you go quit your job?
Mm-hmm.
Because you quit." He said, "Because you quit my job." He said, "Why you didn't go quit your job?" He said, He said, "I want you to go back and you're going to preach." I forgot what I preached when I went back and I did preach, but it hurted more to preach than it did for me to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord told me after I had preached, He said, "This now, mind you, people join church that Sunday, and mind you, everybody knows what didn't happen because it's out there. People join church that Sunday, and the Lord said." See, my chastisement to you is to make you fight against the flesh that wants to be comfortable in the sin.
Right.
He said, but when you have to preach, that means that you got to suppress that flesh and be in the spirit realm to even do this.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, I can't preach without asking God to come with me. I'm just not gifted like a lot of pastors, who just
Right.
got the gift of the jumbo. I got to go to Him. I got to ask Him for it, and you just don't know how humiliating it was to have to go say, God, now I need a word from you when I knew I wasn't worthy. You know what I'm saying? I knew I wasn't worthy. To ask God for nothing, and it crushed me. It crushed
Mm-hmm.
me. So that's when I knew it was God. When
Yeah.
He showed me grace in some kind of way. I had all of these different prophets, authentic prophets, man, who came in. They had a conference at my church. They prayed for us. Um, I became an open book because I knew the Lord had delivered me. And I was able to tell my
Right.
testimony, and it only made my church enhance. That I started being transparent, even though I had got words and wisdom like, "Hey, people ain't ready for that stuff, so you don't tell them everything about you." But me, I was so over it that I just told the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, um, I I may have lost just a few people, right? but I gained so many more because of the transparency and the reality. Because people don't want to know all of your good; they want to know how did you survive?
Right.
How did you come out of this? Right? And so that became my story, and that's how you get this book. Your conditions, not your conclusion.
Right, because you actually had to live it. And a lot of times when people see the men and women of God, and yes, we seek God for a word and we trust Him to give us a word for the house. But tell the people what it's like to preach a word of conviction. God gives it to you so He can start working on you. But when you go forth with it, you're coming with such power because you're living it. What is that like?
Woman of God, I promise you, every sermon that I preach after God told me to come back was about me, and
Yes.
it hurt it to the core. Um, it was so crazy. Listen, and this is the God is truth, my woman of God. Listen to me. It was so piercing, right? That my grandmother, God bless her, she passed away now. Mama D, we called her Mama D. She was my forever member, right? She's one of my top fans, right? She actually called me to her house and said, "Listen, Rav." She always called me Rav. She said, "It hurts me when you preach about yourself like that." And I told her, I said, "Mom, for some reason I can't stop because my thing is, if I'm totally delivered, then it shouldn't hurt no more.
Right.
If I'm totally delivered, then I should be able to preach this, and I should be able to preach it with boldness and not leave no stone unturned. Why? Because my mindset is right now, I ain't going back.
Right.
You let me keep my wife, you let me keep my family, and you didn't uh kill me. I owe it. I owed it to you. And I'm telling you, I went in full holiness after that.
Right.
When people would call fire and brimstone, I was going at it because I understood that the only way people could really be free is to really preach holiness. You know what I'm saying? And let people know that holiness is still right,
Yes.
And just because you're not perfect doesn't mean that you can't preach a perfect gospel,
Exactly.
right?
And that's the thing. The word of God doesn't change.
And
It
and, and
doesn't
and
change.
I and I lie to you not. People, I had pastors telling me, "Man, you keep preaching like that, sending the people to hell, this, that, and the other. You're gonna keep a small church, and that church ain't gonna grow." I was never worried about the church growing more than I was worried about the hand of God being up on my life and God not being mad with me.
Mhm.
It gave me a revelation that I would rather have people mad with me than to have God, because God mad with me. Because, sis, I tell you no lie, even when I got this church, and my church is a nice little size, when I got this particular building, I had people to leave, right? And the offering went all the way down. And the Lord told me, before I can even lose sleep, the Lord said to me, "Now I'm going to do big things with little people."
Mhm.
Because I was about to start complaining. Lord, now look, you didn't put me out here. Sure enough, we did greater things with the smaller crowd than we ever did with the crowd we have right now.
Right.
I mean, major. We did so many major things, sis, that we actually brought, this is unheard of. We brought a fair, an actual fair. We paid for the whole fair and brought it on our grounds of our church and let it be free to the whole community. You understand?
Wow.
God would do
He was blowing your mind.
we were just blowing up. Yes, ma'am. So that's when I realized it, when the fall came and God showed me his grace. And that's why I have so much grace towards everybody else. I really don't believe that even right now I'm not angry with nobody, and I have no ought against anybody. I forgive everybody, even my enemies, because I've seen that kind of grace come from God.
Yes, thank God for that. And because you were able to recognize that's what it was. It was nothing that you had done. You couldn't
Right.
pay for it. You couldn't pray for it. God
Yeah.
had to allow you to sit in it so that he could do the work in you.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
if God had a movie and he was casting, who would you say you would be able to play based on your life? Would you be David, Jonah, Peter, or Paul? Which one would you
I,
attribute yourself
I
to?
would I would attribute myself to David
Okay.
for real. And here's why. Because even after David fell, his name was still mentioned to be the apple of God's eye.
Yes.
And and even after he failed, his children reigned in the kingdom, you know. His children took the throne, and you know, some of them were very, they were very. Solomon was a very good king, um, had some faults, but very good king. And likewise in my life, because I will attribute, because I didn't give up, because I stayed faithful to the work. I've seen it in my seed.
Hmm.
All of my children, all of my kids, all my children, all of their school life, and even into college right now. I got three in college, and one is still in school. She's about to go to high school. All of my children have been all A honor roll students throughout their whole school time.
Good.
All of them, my baby girl is, she's taken, she's actually a prayer warrior. She's only 13, prayer warrior. She's on the prayer line with the ministers in the morning at 6 o'clock on her own without me and her mom ever asking her to do it. Just
Hmm.
something she took on. Um, all of my boys are in college. They're on the dean's honor roll. My daughter has graduated, and she's in clinicals, becoming a nurse. All of their grades are immaculate, right? And they all are saved, and all of them are in church. And my one of my sons and my oldest daughter are both leaders at the churches in which they attend. And so, and my baby girl, she's a leader at our church right now. My other son, he's playing football in college, and we thought that that was going to be a distraction for him, but we received two letters in a row of his conduct at school, and that he is leading a group um, for Christianity at school, and have went and found his own church there, right?
Hmm.
Without us even telling them, hey, we won't see you in church. So it's been a blessing. And then he has started this group to where he got a group of guys from off the football team who watches my live every Sunday. And so it's just amazing. It's just amazing what I've seen happen because of the faithfulness of what God does in your life.
Yes. And that's awesome that your kids are showing you God's faithfulness still in their lives. God still has not forgotten about you
Yes, ma'am.
because of your faithfulness and
Yes,
because of
ma'am.
who you are. Tell us what you would say is the difference between a preacher and a pastor. Because all preachers are not pastors.
I'm gonna say this: a preacher can preach, and he leaves everything at the altar when he preach. He can leave it at the altar and walk away, and never have to look back again. His main concern is how good he preach. Um, you know, did he come over well to the people? What have you? The pastor, he he don't have the chance to leave it at the altar.
Right.
He pastors, and then he carries the weight of all of the members in that church. Now, I can't speak for every pastor, but this pastor, um, I am a hands-on pastor. I my people don't go through other people to get to me, which is, in some ways not always wise, right? But God has given me the strength to be able to handle it to some capacity. and I get a chance to hear the cries. I feel the weight of when my people are sick or what have you it may be. I don't wait till Sunday morning to lay hands. I'm coming to see you in the hospital. I'm gonna lay hands on you in the hospital. I'm coming to your house.
Hmm.
Um, I just hate the devil, and I hate the devices of the enemy. So, again, as a pastor, as a preacher can preach, he get to go, but a pastor has to carry the weight of the people because he can feel when his people are feeling, and then he has to deal with the ridicule of what he preached. A preacher could come in the building and just preach all under your clothes and whatever, whatever, and he don't have to deal with the backlash after. But a pastor, he has to sweat when he gets in the pulpit because he's wondering, is his message going to seem like he's throwing shade? You
Hmm.
know, he's
Right.
got to he's wondering if what he's going to say going to cause somebody to not give today or to walk out and not come back. So we carry the weight. The pastors have more weight than just what a preacher does.
Right. It becomes more like a lifeline for the people. And a preacher can feed you from the spoon, but that they
Mhm.
don't have to actually watch you eat what was given. They're not there with you
Exactly.
in the trenches. That's the
Exactly.
difference between that. And people need to know the difference because sometimes they're discouraged because they want preachers to be pastors. And you have to actually come into the knowledge of who you are, and you have to be committed to the work of God and have a heart for the people to be a pastor. That's not
Yes,
a
ma'am. And
preacher.
pastoring is a call,
Yes.
and I never forget. And I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I'll never forget when I told my pastor I was going to preach. He said, "You either got to be insane or crazy to do this," and I didn't know what that meant until I've had so many almost mental breakdowns.
Hmm.
And let me tell you what makes you have a mental breakdown, and I'll get off it because that wasn't what you asked me. But what makes you have a mental breakdown is when you try to be God instead of being human,
Right.
instead of just serving God and letting God handle His part while you do your part. Again, it is easy for us to carry the weight. Um, to leave out there with the weight on you, even after you preach a deliverance minute, a deliverance message. It's kind of hard to just leave it all at the altar, leave it all on the table. You still go home wondering, did sister such and such, and as much as you knew that message probably touched her, is that going to shift her? Is that going to change? Did she really hear it, or did he really hear it? So we carry the weight, versus the preacher being able to just come in and just go do whatever you want to do afterwards. Um, it's the pastor's heart.
Exactly. And when you have a heart for the people and you're doing it God's way, it actually carries over to when you go home. So, as a husband, your wife gets to see you in your most vulnerable state. She gets to see when the church breaks your heart. She
Hmm.
gets to see when you're carrying the weight of so many others. What has marriage taught you? Even we're not even speaking to the man of God right now. I'm speaking to you being who you are. What has marriage taught you that you feel that all men should know? Because a lot of people look at the pastors and the pastors' wives and they think that because you preach it, everything's supposed to be perfect. But there are times when I know when you are interceding for people, you have to be prayed up at home because those spirits will carry and you'll start having dysfunction in your home and
Yes,
you don't even know where it came from. And it's because something has attached itself to you, your wife. That message of deliverance, the enemy is trying to tear you down with those very words. So, what has marriage taught you that you think that all men should get when it comes to being a husband, not just going through the marriage vows, being a
right.
husband?
Here's what I was want to say. What marriage taught me. The first thing marriage taught me for being a husband is number one, being the man of the house doesn't mean that you're not vulnerable to the house. All right. Um, Being a man of the house is not just giving order and setting laws and rules that fit you, but causes everybody else to be in bondage or to have to abide. Being a man in a house really, what marriage has taught me, in all honesty, is that being vulnerable and being transparent honestly at home causes the marriage to be strong. Um, it wasn't until I started crying in front of my wife, right, that she was able to minister to me well.
Hmm.
It wasn't until I stopped, because sometimes we don't cry in front of our wives. I'm just saying, even as any man, we won't cry in front of our wife and we won't let them see when we are under the weight. But then we argue with them because we want them to see the weight on us.
Hmm.
Um, Even the prophet Elijah said, God did not show it to me. So
Hmm.
we can't expect our wives to be prophetess, to see everything going on with us if we're not communicating. There have to be a lot of communication. I learned as a man of the house that there must be vulnerability, there must be communication to where you communicate what you're going through and you tell a story. Just because you feel like you under the gun or under the weight doesn't mean that you lost the battle.
Right.
But what you do is you give that woman a chance to help you, or to give you advice in certain areas, because there's been some times that at first, when I first got married, I was just setting rules and laws. But when I did that fall, right, and my
Hmm.
wife loved me through it, and she loved me that night, and she hugged me that night all night long, and when I cried, she cried, and man, that that blew me out. It just changed my whole perspective on what kind of respect I should have for this woman,
Right.
and what kind of power God has given her to restore me.
Hmm.
And still today, she does the same exact thing. So how does that work though? I gotta not mute her. I gotta not just throw laws around and rules around, but I have to show her my vulnerability so that she can show me hers. And what I've learned about that is, number one, in all honesty, it makes it easy for her to tell me when she's going through, and it makes it easy for me to not be Superman at home and to show her my weak side, and it's helped my marriage big time, right? Because my wife at first was not my best friend. She was just my wife.
Hmm.
And I was looking for men to be my people, my ears. In other words, somebody I could talk to and let my hair down with, and tell them what's really going on when I don't like stuff, whatever. When I met my wife, my boy, I'm gonna say that again. When I started sharing with my wife like I shared with my boys and made her be my best friend, I noticed that my boys handle my business a little bit different on Mad Day versus my wife.
Right.
When we argue, she don't throw it back in my face because I only told her I got nothing to prove to her. When I started showing that when I started doing that with my wife, then I started realizing I have nothing to prove to this woman. I could be raw with her. I could be open. I could be honest with her. And so, Tanshel, I started being able to tell her stuff like, and I hope men catch this. I started being able to tell my wife stuff like, "Hey, I struggled today, but I made it through. I didn't fall for it. This lady came to me today, and I almost, I was able to talk like that, and it opened up the door for her to be able to talk the same way with me. You see where the strength coming at, and
Right.
so even as it relates to church, I wouldn't bottle when the church was bothering me or when the church made me not sleep over something that they did or whatever. I would share it with her, and I would know when to cut it off by her language, if it's too much for her or not, right? So, um, marriage has really, really showed me a lot. It showed me that I can't, even when we argued, and I'm talking about as a man and woman of God arguing, um, it showed me that I cannot come into even an argument with speculation. That you got to give a person a chance to communicate back to you why they did
Right.
something, or and likewise you as well. I found so my marriage has been more of a whole lot of communication, a whole lot of explanation. See that I've gotten rid of, and this didn't happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? Just it's happening years, but I was able to get rid of that. I don't want to talk about it. It's over with. I say what I said is over with. No, it's let me finish, right?
Hmm.
And then we all try to find a resolve. Because I've done this with my wife, we haven't had a lot of arguments in front of our kids to mess their minds up mentally. They get a chance to see my vulnerability with my, and this is another thing I've learned. Marriage taught me that you don't go to bed angry neither.
Hmm.
Um, you know how people once they argue in the marriage, I don't care if you're saved, preacher, pastor, who's got a title, you want to argue, and then after you argue, everybody want to show their pride, and nobody talks to each other. We get in the bed, nobody touch each other. We separate ourselves. I'm gonna sleep on the sofa, and you're gonna go in the room, and we gonna wake up the next morning. Gonna be the same thing. I made a law in my house, and she agreed. No matter how great the argument become, when we get in that bed, the argument over.
Hmm.
I'm gonna put my feet on you so I can go to sleep because I need you to go to sleep. I You understand? I
Right.
learned not to try to push my manhood or show that I'm the man in those kind of heated moments. You know what I'm saying? Like I know how to get my point across. She get up on the cross. Give her the opportunity to get up on the cross, and don't let it get out of hand. Work on one thing at a time, and then love each other through the night, because anything else opens doors for everything
Right.
else. In all honesty.
Exactly.
And so I became vulnerable with her, and as a result, it made me not be too cool to love on her in front of my daughter. Like we could have an argument. I'm going to get flowers
Hmm.
because I don't care. Listen, and they could call me a punk preacher. Listen to me. I don't care if it looked like I lost the like I lost the fight. I lost the argument. I learned that my job as the husband is to set the temperature in my house. I'm the thermostat. I
Right.
de- I determine whether it stay hot or get cool.
Hmm.
And one thing I learned about my wife is that my wife, or women, period, I think, they'll talk a mean game if you release a mean game. They're gonna talk smack back to you. In other words, what I mean by that is if your conversation always got to be, because I can leave the day, I'll just leave. Of course she gonna say, well, leave then. That's so. And then the enemy will play on your mind and be like, well, she must don't want me. I started catching on to that kind of stuff and started going, because I'm just saying, we say we get to that point, and I'd be like, because look, I'm just ready to go right now. And she go, well, leave then. I turn around and say, I ain't leaving because I love you too much. I've learned how to suck it up and
Right.
listen, and lose the fight. Listen to me, and I'm serious about this. Lose the argument for the benefits that comes with losing it.
Right.
Honestly. And that's why this marriage right here has been a lot better for me, because this is my second marriage, as by the way. Because my first marriage was a lot of flaws of immaturity, right? The second marriage, I learned from it. And again, because of my first fall in this marriage, right, from the residue um, that I let a spirit come in my life or what have you, why almost at the peak of ministry. This girl, the vulnerability and the love she showed for me, I didn't use that love against her to
Hmm.
pimp my wife, to
Right.
pimp her. All right. Like men do, they once they see that a woman really loved them, then every time an argument comes, they want to show that I'm gonna make you bow to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do stupid stuff like not answer my phone, this and that. Not me. I'm gonna tell you I love you, I miss you. You can keep arguing if you want, but I'm gonna change that thing because
Right.
I'm the thermostat, and it helps my whole family be able to operate. Because of that, it helps my children be able to go to school and not have a mental breakdown because they're worried about if daddy and mama gonna have a breakup.
Right.
especially if something bleed out and they could hear it, yes, indeed, I'm coming out and we're gonna turn this thing into a fun day. Joke with the whole family. I'll arrest you, girl. Don't play with me. I'm a cop. Crazy. Just to keep it on that level. And again, vulnerability is everything, sis. I'm sorry,
Oh
I talk too much.
no, that that is awesome because men need to hear that. It makes no sense to run around beating your chest like King Kong and you get into a state where the very person who can be there to help you takes their hands off. Because no one is going to know you better than your wife. No one's going to fight for you like her. She's
No,
fighting for you when you don't even know it, warring in the spirit. So you need to have that knit with her so she can know when I need to come in as the wife of the warrior. Because I'm
can,
coming.
can I can I share something with you?
Sure.
When that great fall happened in ministry, all of the people who were blood left me, except my wife.
Mm,
She stood by me. And it got to the point where one of them told her, "Girl, you stupid for staying
mhm.
there with him. You should have left too because they wanted me to suffer, right?" She stood by my side through it. And here's what I want to say. As a man, you got to learn how to value that queen you got at the house and understand that regardless of how, I'm just saying, combative she might become or how she's trying to express what she's probably been holding for years. And the frustration came out in y'all argument. She probably brought back. But your job is to hear it and apologize about what she bring to you at the time. Do not go back and say, "But you." No, not but you. What she told you, "Hey, you leave your clothes on the floor all the time in the bathroom and I pick them up." Don't go back and say, "Well, you leave your hair in the bathroom and I picked up." No. I'm sorry, babe. I didn't know I was leaving my clothes on the floor. I'm gonna fix that. And listen, by no means am I saying I have a perfect marriage. But what I will say is my wife is my best friend, man. And I don't have to have people with me in my marriage. We could go on a trip on the island by ourselves and I have so much fun with her. She's my best friend. And I'm gonna lead us with the men. Another thing that helps that marriage is if you don't have something to say about your wife to your friends or to your mama or to your bestie who is a female, because none of them really knows your wife like you do because you sleep with her. You really know her.
Right.
And most time when you go out there for that conversation is really because you're trying to feed, watch this, your anger and not really resolve the problem. You're
Hmm.
trying to feed your pride and not really resolve the problem. And so that's what I learned about marriage. And marriage has helped my ministry and all. And I have a lot of people, a lot of young people who got married like me in the church who are still married today. A lot of our marriage, a lot of the friends and members of our church that I married are still married today and are in longevity marriages right now.
That's a
Me and my
blessing.
wife, we're able to counsel a lot of our young marriage couples and things of that nature because of how we do marriage at home. And again, I don't care what nobody say. Um, if you're looking for the woman to be the one who decides how the temperature of that marriage goes, then that's where the big mistake is. In a lot of marriages, it's the man. He gotta control the atmosphere, not with the iron fist but with wisdom and charm, man. I break my wife down. I don't care how mad she is. All I have to do is continue to tell her how much I love her and I'm sorry and just act a fool. Show my vulnerability. Cause I don't
Hmm.
listen, I have nothing to prove to you. You're my best
Right.
friend.
That's your
So no,
girl.
nobody outside this house. My neighbors don't know I'm in here screaming, acting like I'm crying because you leaving me. Saying you leaving me, and you ain't really you ain't never said you leaving me. But I'm saying, please don't leave. I don't mind that
Uh-huh.
because I know she gonna cook for me. I know she gonna love my kids, and I don't care what nobody say. If you could get past that hump of the argument, the house just becomes so peaceful, man.
Yes.
For real, the marriage becomes peaceful. And as a result, man, I look at my children. My children, my son had a baby early, while he was in college, he had a baby. And I was so afraid, Tunshell, that my spirit, my residue of whatever I wrestled with when I was coming up had fell up on him. And I had a good talk with him, talked to him about, you know, um, hey, you got this woman pregnant, you got this young lady pregnant, man. Now be a man and stay in her life. Don't just walk away. And I just started really going through with him and talking to him about it and this, that, and other. And without me happening to tell him, and it's just a proud moment for me, and I'll stop. Um, he called me out the blue and said, "Hey, Dad, I just wanted to show you all the pictures and the videos of everything I'm doing for her right now because I understood what you was telling me." And I just, again, if it falls on your seed when you show it that when you be the husband that you need to be at home, man, you could really, really change the attitude of your children and the behavior and everything. How you, whatever theme, how you set the temperature in that house can work for your whole family for real.
Right. And it would be a shame for your sons to have a role model outside of you. It's a blessing when you can be the role model for your kids because they
Yep.
get to witness you on a regular basis. It's not what they heard, it's not what someone told them about you. They actually get to see you walk in it. So that is
Yes, ma'am.
admirable to see that, and I applaud everything that you have said and spoken about your marriage, your ministry. So, how would someone get a copy of your book? Because you are the author of Your Condition Is Not Your Conclusion, which now we know where the message came from, the power
Yes.
behind that message. How would someone get your book or to follow you if they want to connect with you?
Um, if they wanted to get the book is on Amazon. And it's a what I would consider a raw book. I didn't have a chance to really, I didn't have the money to really kind of put it through all of the whatever to check it and all of that. I used what I had around me, but some of my members helped me to kind of go over it, teachers, small people around me, uh, try to spell check it for me and try to, check my quotations and things of that nature. But if you read the book, it is a very raw book. Every story in there is a true, honest story. I'm actually telling the truth about myself and things that happened to me and how God brought me through all of those things. And the point of the book, the message of the book is that your condition is not your conclusion, and also that failure is not final. So you can get the book at Amazon. It's at Barnes and Nobles. Um, it was on Walmart it was on the Walmart online app for a little while, and it was in Walmart when it first came out here in Texas. Um, and it was at the airport at the DFW Love Field Airport. But now it's kind of like just pretty much you could get a short copy on Amazon. Definitely.
Okay, well,
And
thank
if you
you.
want to follow me, you can follow me at Apostle in Rainey, Apostle Nathaniel Rainey III on Facebook. You go to my Jarvis Tabernacle page. Instagram, it's the same thing. Apostle 3. I'm sorry, Apostle in Rainey 3 on Instagram. And I think I'm not on everything else. That's about it.
Okay, well, it has been such a joy to get to sit and speak with you and to hear your story and your testimonies of living by God's grace, because
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
what people need to hear, that men and women of God, we're not perfect, but we serve a perfect God. And all of us are the manifestation of his grace.
Yes, ma'am.
Every day, new grace, new mercy every day. Because if we don't watch ourselves, tomorrow might be that day
Yes,
when
ma'am.
we make a decision and have to seek God's forgiveness. But the praise part is that we truly understand repentance.
Yes, ma'am. Truly.
Yes. So,
God doesn't call perfect people, but He called imperfect people to make people perfect.
yes, perfect in Him.
Yes,
And because He knows us, He is not expecting us to be anyone else. I know
Yes.
exactly who you are.
Yes,
I know
ma'am.
your highs, your lows, your good, your bad. I know when you're going to make that decision before you even make it. But I need to allow you to do that so that I can show you to trust me.
Yes, ma'am.
Trust me. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on here and being my guest. I love you, my brother. I am so proud of you. I thank God for you. And I just want to leave with the people that Apostle Rainey has taught us that when God says yes, no man can say no. When God has his hand on you, you shall get to the expected end. All
Yes,
you've
Lord.
got to do is surrender, walk by faith, and trust that God's will shall be done. I want to thank everyone for joining in. Continue to follow me, Tanshel Ward, by His Grace podcast, Not Worthy, but Worth It. Thank you, Apostle Rainey, and may
Thank you
God
so
continue to bless you.
much.
Thank you
Same
so
to you,
much.
my sister. Love you so much, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Love you too. Take care. Tell your wife I say hello.
I will. Blessings.
Blessing to you too. Talk to you later. Bye bye.